Welcome to the SCS Happy Hour. I am Scout, joined here by Alec Nederveld. And hey, it was a long summer, but we are back. We are back talking about football. Football is just around the corner. And just wanted to say, fellas, it's been great to interact with y'all over the summer, over recruiting, over all that stuff. But we're finally, as of today, recording just under 2 weeks from Farmageddon in Ireland. And we're just here to talk about some of our dark horses. And then Alec, is there anything you want to talk about over the summer?
I'm just excited to get into college football. Summer's always fun. Fall, when we actually get games, so much better. Let's start talking them.
Hell yeah. So we are going to talk about some of the dark horse teams. So this is going to be set up into basically like three different brackets. We do have a power conference that Alec doesn't think that people are talking enough about, and then I have a power conference team that I think can make the leap from a regular team to a or regular good team to a college football playoff team. And then I also have a G5 team that people are talking about a little bit, but I still think could be talked about more. But Alec, what are your thoughts on the TCU Horned Frogs?
I just think that they're a team that is just not getting enough love. Simple as that. Under Sonny Dykes, TCU has been one of the better recruiting, probably top three recruiting teams in the Big 12 over the last couple of years. They have a very good roster. They have a deep roster, a roster that's more deep than most of the conference. I think a lot of their success also starts at quarterback. Josh Hoover, not a furry by the way, is back for his third year as a starter. Excuse me, I guess 2.5.
Yeah.
But he's a very productive quarterback, and again, it just fits the not getting enough attention theme with this TCU team. They were pretty good last year, had a little bit of a slow start. I believe they ended up going 8-5, maybe even 9-4. And I think that's around the area where TCU is going to be again. I think that they're going to be one of the many 8-4 or 9-3 teams in the Big 12. I think that talent-wise, they're on a very similar level to Baylor, and Baylor's a very trendy upset pick. Oh, they're going to beat Auburn, they might beat SMU, and they're going to be rolling from there. Well, I think this TCU team is very similar to them. They had some bad losses a year ago. They should have beat UCF. They should have beat Houston. Um, Take those away, they were competitive in just about every single game, with the exception of SMU. I do really like this team. I like Sonny Dykes. Let's remember that 3 years ago, he led the TCU Horned Frogs to the national championship game. That is a pretty big deal. There aren't very many coaches who say they can do that, much less at a school like TCU in their first year. So I think that this TCU team is going to be very good. I think they're just not getting the flowers they deserve. I think, again, they're going to be around that 8-4, 9-3 mark. Depending on how a couple bounces of the ball go, they could be in that Big 12 Conference Championship, especially 9-3. Maybe with a little bit of luck, maybe 6-2 in conference play, or 6-3, 7-2 maybe. That could be good enough. We'll see though.
Yeah, and I will say my bit on TCU is that this is a very workable schedule. I know a lot of people have talked about the UNC game immediately, but I mean after that, I think your biggest foe, especially going into this year, is that SMU game. Even though it's an out of conference game and it doesn't really matter in that sense, there's still a pride aspect to it all. It's still the boys on the other side of DFW, and like if you want to cement where you want to go from here on out, you have to be your regionally best team, right? You're not really worried about, overcoming Texas or even Baylor at that point, but if you can't beat SMU, if you fall second fiddle to SMU, that's going to be a lot worse. I will say having Arizona State on the schedule this year does make it a little bit more difficult. Having Iowa State, I'm not really sure where Iowa State falls per se. I know we will see them in Farmageddon in a couple weeks, but yeah, and they also have Kansas State. But it's like with these power conference teams, you're gonna have big time games, and I think that this is a more workable schedule. I think you have a more veteran team to work with. And I will say the one thing that in 2024 that you can like look forward to in uh sorry, in 25. You ended the season winning 4 games, losing to Baylor by 3, and the 2 games before that you had also won, right? So after your bye week, you had only lost 1 game and you had won, what is that, 6? So you're
Six out
six
of
and one.
seven.
Yeah. So 6 out of 7 in the year. That's a bunch of momentum, and I think that they're really going to do great. And as you can see with Luke Altmaier right there, I have Illinois. And I understand that they beat South Carolina in the Citrus Bowl, but it's so hard nowadays to overcome that last step, right? Like ask James Franklin how hard it is to overcome the last step of like, hey, we're a pretty good team, and then like making the playoffs, right? And I understand that Penn State made the playoffs finally last year, but to make that final step is so hard. I think that Illinois has the chance to do it relatively early in the cycle compared to some of these other teams. They now Illinois has an extremely workable schedule. They have three games that I think that they have a tough like a tough draw at. Indiana, USC, and Ohio State, which they already have USC as their homecoming, which I think is hilarious. But with those three games, if you come out with one of those wins and you don't mess up everywhere else, if you're a 10-2 Big Ten team, you're pretty much in the playoff. You might not be in the playoff, but you're pretty much in. And if that comes with beating Duke at Duke, with how good Duke should be in relative to a Duke year, and we'll talk about how bad Duke has been later when we talk about another bad team, but um, or historically bad, not just the last year. Manny Diaz has done a great job of that. But hey, uh, but yeah, I have Illinois basically, finishing 10-2 in the regular season. They might mess up twice, going. They do have Ohio State and USC at home, but I think Indiana has come to, be just as good as they were last year. They had the quote unquote easier schedule last year, but they like I think Indiana or not Indiana, Illinois takes the next step, and Brett Bielema makes it to the college football playoff. Alec, do you have any thoughts before we move on to the next team?
Yeah, I like what you're saying about Illinois here. I am pretty high on them. Again, this is a team that won 10 games last year. Very proven quarterback in Luke Altmaier, proven head coach as well with Brett Bielema. They've got a very good offensive identity, an identity that a lot of teams don't want to play. A lot of teams don't want to get power ran by them 20 times a game. Um, I don't blame them for that either. With that being said, I think that the big thing for Illinois this year is, can you beat Indiana? I think that outside of that game, they're going to be 9-2. You're going to probably trip up to Ohio State. I'm also thinking at Duke and at Washington could be some sleeper games, especially if
At
that Washington
Washington,
game
yeah.
is at night. Um, it's just, what are you going to do in that Indiana game? I think those two teams are very similar caliber, and the winner of that probably is going to make the playoff.
Hmm.
If you're on the right side of that, you get the right bounce of the ball, whatever it may be. You could blow Indiana out because you're an actual good team. Whatever will happen there, I think, is the turning point for the season, and that's only in week 4.
Yeah, and I will say it's definitely a very old school style from the fellas over at Illinois. They're you know exactly what you're getting. Ask Josh McCray is out at Georgia, but you're gonna get the ball run on you for sure. And it's just, can you stop them for 2 downs and force them to throw the ball on you? And I think Luke Altmaier, and he's kind of in that same situation with Josh Hoover, basically a 2 year starter, 2.5 year starter, if you really put it that way. But yeah, but these teams really that have that 3rd year quarterback essentially, they're really going to start shining. And I think a lot of schools are in that little bubble, but then there's other schools that they may have actually like lost some. And then there's some that are set up, and it might be a class cannon because we know how quarterbacks can make a team, really good for one season. But those UNLV Fighting Rebels, headband by Dan Mullen out of nowhere. I will say one thing here. NIL has made this sport very interesting to me. Um, the money is all out on the table. Everybody knows what's happening. It's it's not totally transparent, but it's a lot more transparent than it was previously. Um, but yeah, so UNLV, they have Alex Orgy from Michigan, or Alex Calandria. Did I say that right?
Anthony Calandria.
Anthony Calandria, my fault, as their two possible starters at UNLV. They have a extremely easy schedule aside from one game or 2 games really. So they face UCLA at home somehow because big money. And then they play at Boise. And outside of these two games, I am very like I don't really see a big time game um, in comparison to where I think UNLV will be. But if you told me that like right after, Matt Sluka left the program and all that, that Illinois or not Illinois, UNLV would find themselves like flat on their feet pushing to a season like this, I would have not believed you at all. But yeah, but this is a very workable schedule. Granted, to make the college football playoff with this schedule, I think you have to go you can't lose to UCLA. I know that might sound crazy. I think it would honestly be better if you lost to another team and you prove that you could beat a UCLA. But I think you have to go undefeated with the schedule to really, make it. I think Boise proved that last year. Um, but that being said, even if regular season you go 11-1 and you lose to Boise and then you end up beating Boise, I think with how the playoffs still set up that you have a shot at the playoff anyway. But yeah, um, but that's my take on UNLV. I know that some of my Florida fan base, including my father, might be like Dan Mullen's not winning at UNLV, but I just think that he has an offense that is stupid simple for a quarterback to learn. We saw it at Mississippi State. We saw it in spurts with Florida. I think that if he can get a smooth start, he has Idaho State and Sam Houston. That should be a smooth 2-0. If you get those boys to believe in a little shootout against UCLA, you could be going, 4-0 into Wyoming, 5-0 into Air Force, 6-0 into Boise State, right? And if they're an undefeated team going into Boise State, they're, I would, a hot Dan Mullen team is not going to lose that game. Plain and simple. Do you have any thoughts on UNLV before we move on?
Yeah, I've got a couple. First thing, that point about Dan Mullen that will make your Florida fans mad. I think everybody should agree that he's a great X's and O coach,
Yeah.
just can't recruit. Or well, doesn't want to recruit, maybe the more accurate term. But no, he's gonna get his guys ready to play. He'll out scheme some teams. He'll get his boys in the best position they can be to win. The big thing that I see with this, the other point that I have, I don't think that you just need to win the Mountain West Championship at like 12-1, maybe 11-2, and that might be good enough. Nothing really matters unless you win that conference championship. We're just looking at it from an auto bid perspective.
Yeah.
If you win the Mountain West, that automatically knocks off Boise State, who is probably the most likely team to make the college football playoff and out of the Mountain West, or out of the group of five in total, excuse me. And at that point, it's down to either them or really Tulane. Maybe there's a surprise team somewhere we will see there. But if you can just win the Mountain West with a good record, you put yourselves in a very good chance to make the college football playoff. I do like this UNLV team. When you have a guy as experienced as Dan Mullen is, coaching at the Mountain West level, we saw it last year with Bronco Mendenhall at New Mexico. I mean, they were only 5-7, but that was a very impressive 5-7, all things considered. I really like where this team's at. I think that UNLV is, at minimum, going to be top 2 in that Mountain West. I'm not sure they can clear the Boise hurdle. They'll be in a good spot to do that, though.
Yeah. And I will say one thing here is that the only other G5 that I would have tossed out there as a not talked about as much as they should team is James Madison, simply because I think how they finished the season kind of overshadowed how they were the whole rest of the season. And I think that, I know my Sunbelt guys kind of dislike James Madison and how their fan base acts since they're such a young program in the league. But I mean, the way that they were playing the first 4 weeks of last year, so that this was their score lines: 30-7 against Charlotte, 13-6 against Gardner Webb, but that was like a pouring down rain game. I remember. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, they dropped 70 on North Carolina. And then they dropped 63-7 on Ball State, and then they slip up against ULM. And I think that's really what put like a wrench in it. They slip up again against Georgia Southern, and they get beat by App State, and they get beat by Marshall. And at that point, they did recover and win their bowl game. And I think one thing that's so hard for some of these G5s that slump is that they just fall off. But James Madison was my only other one that I would have put up there. But yeah, but UNLV, I'm definitely high on y'all. I will be coming back to this if UNLV somehow sucks this year, because I swear there's always like one team that I'm like, why wouldn't they lose? And then they tell me pretty quick why they lose. Okay, so now we have a interesting topic we're about to bring up. So this program has always kind of focused on teams rather than individual players. I wanted to just toss out two, and not Heisman picks, but just two random picks of like two awards that could possibly, win. And Mr. Alec had picked Jordan Tyson for the Biletnikoff. I think wide receivers just a little bit thin this year in general, so I think that you could basically throw out any name. But when you take somebody like a Arizona State and somebody like a receiver for Arizona State, with Sam Levitt and everything, I don't think it's a crazy thing. And then for the Mackey, the tight end award, I have Terrance Carter Jr., friend of the show, at Texas Tech, formerly of Louisiana. But yeah, so Alec, what are your thoughts on Jordan Tyson and that Arizona State offense in 2025?
Look, I'm just gonna say this right now. I do not think Jordan Tyson's gonna win the award. Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams do still exist. They're not going anywhere. But if by some miracle happens that a meteor hits Columbus and Tuscaloosa, I think Jordan Tyson is in a prime position to be that next receiver to take that step forward. So he had over 1,000 yards, over 10 touchdowns last year. Excuse me. But just looking at where Arizona State's going to be on offense this year, he's got one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and Sam Levitt throwing it to him. And I think the big advantage that he has also is just this Arizona State offense is going to be more pass heavy. They're going to be throwing it more. You don't have a Cam Scatterbo to rely on. I do like Kanye Uda more than most, but I think that this offense is going to be built around Sam Levitt, and who is Sam Levitt's main guy? It's going to be Jordan Tyson. I can definitely see this man getting to around that 1,400 yards at a minimum. Probably could get up to 13, 14 touchdowns as well. 100-yard receiver, 100 yards and a touchdown a game kind of guy. And if that might be good enough, I think he could get even higher than that as well. But that's a good position for Jordan Tyson to be in my opinion.
Yeah, so now we're looking at betting odds. This is a glorious part of the year. But actually, so Jordan Tyson currently ranks 7th in betting odds, at plus 1900. And I mean, honestly, like I could see, I don't think it's a lot of cope to like say that yeah he could be up there. I do think obviously Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams, Evan Stewart, they're all on the teams they were last year. You can say the same thing for Cam Coleman. But if you're really balling and with how Arizona State plays, like what if Ohio State wants to run the ball more, right? What if Alabama wants to run the ball more? Oregon. Now I think Oregon, they still might find ways to use Evan Stewart as they did with Tez Johnson last year. But even like Cam Coleman, like what if Auburn finds a running identity, right? And I think you can say the same thing like wide receiver by committee at A&M or at Texas. But if Tyson can compile some 200, 300-yard games, I don't think it's a crazy thing. And then Terrance Carter, I think it's kind of the same idea as now. Granted, I think the Mackey is one of those that it's like it, it's so reliant on how you do in just a few games. Like I know, like I'm pretty sure Warren ended up actually winning it last year, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's like if you're the guy, if you get 17 receptions on the road, you're going to get one. And I think Terrance Carter, I think that offense with Baron Morton at quarterback, I think they're Morton at quarterback, I think they're going to be a lot better than people think that they will be. And I know they're getting a lot of hype recently in the preseason. But yeah, I think the Big 12, and I said this last year, but the Big 12 is going to be such a show to watch this year. And I think like with the fall of the original Pac-12, because I guess the Pac-12 still exists somehow, um, but with the fall of that, I think that the Big 12 has become the fun conference. And then you got all the teams, as we just said with Arizona State, you got Arizona State, Arizona, Colorado, and Utah all from the Pac-12. And those are like four of the most fun teams in a lot of different sports. So with that, I'm just very high on some of these teams and like how they can be. I really do appreciate like the level of football that we have to experience here, like just throughout the sport. But yeah, so that's all for me on that. But I do think that any guy really could win some of these other awards. I don't think there's one individual player at any position that I would just go ahead and say is gonna win some award. I think even Heisman's like that. Whereas last year it was like, well, if it's not Travis Hunter, then who is it, right? So yeah, did you have any other player that you'd like to bring up?
No, there is one point I'm going to add. It just does seem like there's a lot of parity in college football this year. I mean, there's no true title favorite right now. A lot of people are saying Texas or Penn State. Georgia's always going to be up there, Ohio State. And that's just the top four. You have other good teams like could Clemson make a run? LSU, could Bama be back? There's just a lot of parity right now, and you can see that with the awards. There's no front runner at all for the Heisman. There's a lot of very good quarterbacks. I wouldn't say there's an elite quarterback. Um, Really your two best players, your best player is Jeremiah Smith, and it's a competition for who's number two, and from that we don't know.
Yeah. And yeah, but yeah, and then our final point, which is kind of out of left field, we are usually a very positive show, but we did want to bring up one thing. So, the last time, correct me if I'm wrong, Alec, because I know we literally had just looked this up. The last time a team was 0-12 in back or winless in back-to-back years was Duke from 2000 to 2001.
Yes.
Okay.
No team has ever gone 0-12 in back-to-back years. Not yet, at least.
Yes, and now we are looking at the Kent State Golden Flashes, pride of Nick Saban, and where they are in 2025 is a massive yes.
Dumpster.
What whatever your brain just filled in right there. Yes, that is where they are. And I will say not to just hate on them, not to just pour on them, but it's in these situations, you expect a team to get better. But I think for Kent State, we've seen them kind of even trickle down, like just trickle down more and more and more every year. And when you have teams in your conference like a Miami, Ohio, like a Toledo, like a Ohio, that are consistently good in football, you might not have a motivation to be good at football, especially with all this like, NIL and stuff, and I'm sure that they're falling back from that. But yeah, Alec, give us your thoughts on Kent State going into 2025.
Yeah, you made a good point there. Just from investment, Kent State does not invest in their football team, and you can see that they are not going to be very good this year, in large part because of it. So this is a team that under Kenny Burns was 1-23. They only beat one FCS team, and they lost to FCS St. Francis this past year, who is about to be a D3 program, which again says a lot about Kent State. Um, it got worse when Kenny Burns was first suspended and then fired for, I think, allegedly betting on Kent State to lose because he had gambling debts or credit card debts, some debt that had to be paid off. He's gone now. They have Mark Carney, their offensive coordinator from 2024, as their head coach. He has never been a head coach before. He has never coached at the Power 4 level. His best job before this was being the Charlotte offensive coordinator from 2020 to 2022. I have no clue what the record was for Charlotte. I know it was not very good because Charlotte had a new coach in 2023 and he was Biff Poggi and he wasn't very good. Sorry for the Charlotte disrespect, Scout. It just had to be said to prove my point. Pretty much anybody good that comes through Kent, Ohio is going to transfer out. Pretty much anybody that is on the roster is not very good. Tommy Ulatowski is the man set to take over at quarterback, and he was not very good. There's just no positives to say here. I guess two positives to say. UMass joined the MAC this year, so Kent State might win a conference game. They weren't the unanimous worst team in the MAC this year. Some people thought that was going to be UMass instead. Maybe that's somewhere to grow. Maybe it's a sign of confidence. I don't know. It's not a horrible thing to see though.
Yeah. And I will say my favorite bit of knowledge that I found out going through this is that uh because Charlotte's only won one bowl game and they or not one. They made one bowl game and they lost to Buffalo. Since that moment, they have not sniffed a bowl appearance, and that was also during that period just after. But yeah, but I will say this: we will know, we will be aware, if Kent State cannot win a game by week one. Saturday, August 30th, they play Merrimack at home, and if they lose to Merrimack, who, fellas, we are going to, I believe they should have the schedule on FBS schedules. Or FB schedules. Uh, yeah. So Merrimack last year on the FCS went 5-6, and their only wins were against fellow FCS teams, and it was the bad FCS team. So if they cannot squeeze out a victory against Merrimack, we will know that they definitely won't beat Texas Tech on the
Yeah.
road. Buffalo, Florida State, Oklahoma. It's worse than I thought. And then, but that UMass game, I will say, Saturday, October 11th, have it highlighted, folks. They might win. They might win UMass. Um, but yeah, but if they don't win UMass, the road gets even more rocky because then you get at Toledo, then you get Bowling Green, and those are not going to be easy games in any stretch. Uh, CMU, where do they stack up nowadays?
We
That
got a
would
new head coach. They weren't very good last year. At Bowling Green and at Akron are somewhat winnable too. I think they played Akron pretty close last year. Again, though, this is just a pretty dire situation to be in. They're not going to be more talented than anybody other than maybe Merrimack, the FCS team they play week one, who, by the way, lost 63-17 to UConn last year. That's just the status of the Merrimack Warriors football program and how they might be worse than Kent State or might even be better, which I really wouldn't be surprised either way. It is such a horrible situation to be in. There's been some talk about ULM recently and how poor their athletics budget as a whole is and how they might need to drop out of the Sun Belt and or the FBS. Kent State, at least in their football department, is definitely worse.
Yeah, and I will say I know that we'll have Kent State football till at least 2030 because they play Rutgers. But next year, I just wanted to look ahead at their schedule. Um, Granted, it's not fully built out yet, but they have a game against the Ohio State Buckeyes, and I guess that will also be a. But we're not here to dunk on Kent State, but this is a very low point
Well,
for the program. And we will be here for it for sure. And we're not just gonna be like, oh, Kent State lost, Kent State lost, Kent State lost. But this is something that if they do lose to Merrimack, I guarantee someone, whether it be a Barstool, whether it be a whoever, is gonna start, ticking down the. Because when did they finish the season with a win in 2023? Because I know they went
yeah, they
one.
beat an FCS team. I don't remember who.
Yeah, but it was a third game, so they lost 12 games last year, and then they had six, nine. So they're already on a 20 game losing no 21 game losing
21 game.
streak. And then yeah, so then you'd get to 22 games, 23 games, 24 games. And then at some point, even if you win a game, even if you go 1-11 again, then they're just going to talk about how out of your last blank because ugh. But yeah, and it's not even that far away that Kent State was a decent team. They went
Mhm.
7-7 in 2021, but like, mm, it's just a tough time for the Golden Flashes. And also, that 7-7 comes after making the MAC championship. That's actually a crazy thing to think about. They only lost two games in the MAC and made the championship game. And then all their losses were to Power Four opponents outside of the MAC championship. So, but yeah. But fellas, so that is our first episode back. We will try to get Lucas on. We will try to get Joe on. We'll try to get some other people on. Um, Whenever I make the post, Era Preps with Christian Proshka and the fellas, we are like partnering with them for like a bunch of other random stuff. And we will have a bunch of content coming. Obviously, I've been doing a lot more photography stuff, as I'm sure some of y'all are aware from the Instagram. But yeah, but go ahead, Follow us on socials. All of his socials are Alec Nederveld, ALECNEDERVELD. Why did I spell it like that? I have no idea, but I spelled it right.
Nicely done.
Um,
Hey, better
but
execution than most.
yeah, and then all of mine are either Southern Charm SP or Southern Charm Sports, depending on the platform. But by the time you type Southern Charm S, usually on there. But yeah, we shall see y'all next time, and peace.